Hey, and welcome to a new feature of Every Other Friday Off, Shop Projects. Today we're going to be building some shelves. My workshop, like every workshop of any size, is not big enough. But since I'm not moving anytime soon and have no idea when that lottery ticket's going to hit, I need to make do with what I have. The solution is to go up. I've got all that bare, beautiful wall ready for shelves to get my junk off the floor. Fortunately, the Mythbusters seem to have already solved my problems for me, and when I went out searching for more details on how exactly they built these shelves, I found the man ready and willing to explain. The actual construction of the shelves was even more clever than I'd thought.
These shelves, for example, they're about 20 feet high and they go about 80 feet back in the shop. And I'd say it took me about 3 days with a helper to put these together, to build them from scratch at a fraction of the cost of store-bought shelves. I want to make one further point though about this. The rectangular steel tubing presents you with a surface like this that you can put two things together, and it makes a really nice place to lay a bead, and it's flat, easier to build, sturdier, lighter weight, lasts forever.
This is the clever bit. By overlapping rather than using a butt or a miter joint, the welding's much easier. Your cut lengths don't need to be that accurate. Because all the weld joints are easily accessible fillet welds, a novice welder with a MIG torch can easily do a great job. And if you don't have a welder, go get one. A decent one will set you back $800. You'll save that much on this project alone if you're doing a couple shelves. Step 1 is to get your plan together. If I skip this step, I'm guaranteed to mess up. I like to have all the cut lengths laid out so I can do all my cutting before I start any assembly work. I'm throwing a little bit of foil insulation up on the walls. It only has about an R6 value, but it leaves my studs exposed, which is nice for being able to add wires later. The fat guy on the ladder reaching up oh so elegantly is insulated by a brand new set of Jolly Red coveralls. He thinks they're slimming. That's the stuff I'm using. Google away. The insulation just staples into the joists. It's not much, but it's doing an excellent job of being better than nothing. Alright, let's get to cutting. This is where the Mythbusters method shines. If you don't have a good high-quality saw, you're not going to get good square cuts that produce high-quality fit-ups. With the Mythbusters method, none of the ends are butted up, so lengths don't have to be perfect or square. I can go ahead and use my Harbor Freight saw all day long. I love the drop saw because you can walk away, get a cup of coffee while it does its thing, and it still counts as working. Lazy man's tip: measure once, then match your pieces. It's much more important to be consistent than it is accurate. The design is basically 2 ladder sections made out of square tubing. I use 1.5 square tubing with 16th inch wall. Up to now we've been pretty cavalier about measurement and accuracy, but laying out this first ladder section, getting it exactly square and right, is the most critical part of this whole operation. I've clamped angle iron onto the bottom of the rails to get them square and the correct distance apart. I've also clamped in temporary spacer pieces to keep the rails true to one another. I'm only going to tack in the cross members at this point. Using all fillet welds is great for strength and ease of welding, but it does create a lot of distortion. Managing that distortion by waiting as long as possible to complete full welding is how you keep your frame square. I'm also adding a reinforcement piece near the bottom of the legs. This piece is butt welded. It could have been overlapped, but I wanted a little bit more space here at the bottom, so I made an exception. The second ladder piece is much easier than the first because you have the first ladder piece to work as a template for you. Look how hard that fat man's working. Why not make him a happy fat man by clicking the subscribe button to subscribe to Every Other Friday Off? The method to the madness here is to lock one corner down, getting it square and true to the lower frame. Then you can start moving the upper frame around corner by corner until everything lines up. Very nice. Once again, the cross members are just tacked at this point. Extra square tubing makes a great gauge for lining up pieces. A couple more tacks, and I'll go ahead and add another reinforcement piece across the bottom. I added another spacer piece at the bottom, but it's not welded in yet. Then all of the angle iron that will become the shelves itself gets clamped into place. And time for the fat man to weld. At this point, I am doing full fillet welds. You could technically weld up the entire structure from this position here, but welding out of position still isn't very easy for me, and the structure's pretty light, so I just flip it. This is why I don't build anything out of wood anymore. I end up with something stronger and lighter that I can build faster. I'm also adding little angle iron spacers to each cross member. This will make sense later. This is a 9-foot tall, 2-foot wide, 4.5-foot long steel structure, but it's still relatively easy for your average jump-suited fat man to manhandle. After all that welding, your frame isn't going to be square. But that's okay. We've saved little angle iron runners for underneath the legs all the way until now, and we're going to use them to square up the frame in its final sitting position. Once again, we're going to anchor a single point. In this case, I've anchored one corner to the table. Then we're going to make small adjustments to twist the frame in the direction we want. It's pretty hard to figure out, but just keep trying and measuring, and you'll get there. A little more floor jack, and perfect. Once you have everything sitting where you want it, you can go ahead and weld in the runners, checking in between each weld. You can actually use the weld to move the frame where you want it. Wherever you weld will pull down, so weld your high side first and things will level out that last couple of tenths. And now the shelf can go into close to its final position. I'm adding clearance holes for some lag screws and a couple of scraps of angle iron. The scraps are used to anchor the shelf assembly to the wall, and then the anchors are welded to the frame. That way, no chance of it falling over. I'm using 2x10 wood planks to serve as the shelves. The fact that these boards are 1.5 inches thick is the whole reason I chose 1.5 angle iron for the shelf supports. The boards sit in the angle iron and also rest on the spacers that we added earlier. And there you have it. For less than $100 in steel and a day's work, I've got a custom shelf that's a lot nicer than anything I can get into the store and fits my shop perfectly. Thanks for watching, and please click that subscribe button. It keeps the fat man going.